black SUV pulled up to the curb on South Lawndale Avenue, and for a moment, Marcus Sullivan couldn't bring himself to open the door. Through the tinted window, he stared at the crumbling two-story brick building that had once been his entire world. 27 years had passed since he'd last stood on this street, but the weight of those memories pressed against his chest like a physical force. The driver glanced in the rearview mirror, waiting. Marcus took a breath, adjusted his baseball cap lower over his eyes, and finally stepped out onto the cracked sidewalk. The November wind cut through his expensive jacket, carrying with it the familiar scent of the neighborhood. Exhaust fumes mixed with the sweet smell from the nearby panaderia, exactly as he remembered. He'd told no one he was coming here. Not his publicist, not his manager, not even his wife. This trip belonged to him alone, a promise he'd made to himself 3 months ago when he'd seen the news article that changed everything. The headline had been simple, almost mundane. Woman freed after 35 years in prison for crime she didn't commit. But it was the photograph that had stopped his heart. There she was, older, grayer, her face lined with decades of suffering, but unmistakably her. Gloria Henderson, the woman who had saved his life when he was 14 years old, the woman who had gone to prison for protecting him, the woman he had abandoned. If you're feeling the weight of this moment, imagine carrying that guilt for nearly 3 decades. Before we continue with Marcus's journey back to the place where everything changed, take a moment to subscribe to this channel. We bring you real stories of redemption, courage, and the kind of human connections that remind us what truly matters in life. Hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will challenge everything you think you know about loyalty, sacrifice, and second chances. This story is presented as a narrative reconstruction. Marcus stood before the building, his hands trembling despite the expensive gloves. The red brick had darkened over the years, stained by pollution and neglect. Several windows on the upper floor were boarded up, and graffiti covered the metal security door that had replaced the old wooden one. But apartment 2C, the second window from the left on the second floor, that had been hers. That had been Gloria's. He remembered the first time he'd climbed those stairs, running from the gangbangers who'd been recruiting kids in the neighborhood. He'd been 12, skinny as a rail, with holes in his shoes and hunger gnawing at his stomach. His mother was working her 3rd shift at the diner, and their own apartment 2 blocks away offered no refuge. His stepfather would be there, drunk and angry as always. Marcus had burst through the building's entrance, taking the stairs 2 at a time, and nearly collided with a woman carrying groceries. She was in her 40s then, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense expression. Instead of yelling at him for his recklessness, Gloria Henderson had taken one look at his terrified face and understood everything. "Get inside," she'd said, unlocking her door. "Now." He'd hesitated only a second before following her in. Through the window, he watched the gang members pass by below, searching for him. Gloria had set down her groceries, walked to the window, and calmly pulled the curtain closed. "You hungry?" she'd asked, as if hiding a scared kid from drug dealers was the most natural thing in the world. That was the beginning. Over the next 2 years, apartment 2C became his sanctuary. When his stepfather's violence escalated, Gloria's door was always open. When he had nowhere else to go, she fed him, helped him with homework, and talked to him about a future that seemed impossible from where he stood. She worked as a nurse's aide at the county hospital, pulling double shifts to make ends meet, but she always had time for the lost boy from down the street. Gloria never had children of her own. She'd told him once that God had other plans for her, but Marcus knew better now. He had been her plan. He had been the son she'd chosen, the life she'd decided to pour herself into. And when the moment came that would define both their lives, she hadn't hesitated to sacrifice everything for him. Marcus forced himself to move forward, climbing the 3 concrete steps to the entrance. The security door was locked, but through the grimy glass panel he could see the narrow hallway with its peeling wallpaper and flickering fluorescent light. How many times had he run down that hallway, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders, eager to tell Gloria about something he'd learned in school? A woman emerged from the building, eyeing him suspiciously as she pushed past. Marcus caught the door before it closed and stepped inside. The smell hit him immediately, a mixture of mildew, cooking grease, and industrial cleaner. It was the smell of poverty, of buildings maintained just barely enough to remain standing. It was the smell of his childhood. His feet carried him to the staircase automatically, muscle memory guiding him even after all these years. The wooden banister was still there, worn smooth by countless hands. As he climbed, he noticed the details that had changed. New paint in some spots, water stains that hadn't been there before, a missing light fixture on the landing, and the things that remained exactly the same. When he reached the second floor, Marcus stopped. His heart was pounding now, and not from the physical exertion. Apartment 2C was right there, just 10 feet away. The door had been painted a dull brown, and someone had stuck a faded notice from the City Housing Authority on it. He approached slowly, drawn by a force he couldn't name. He raised his hand to touch the door, and the memories crashed over him like a wave. He was 14 again, standing in this exact spot on a sweltering July night. He could feel the heat, smell the summer air, hear the distant sound of sirens. And he could see Derek Martinez's face, twisted with rage and high on something that made his eyes wild. Derek had been 22, a mid-level enforcer for the Latin Kings who controlled this neighborhood. Marcus had witnessed Derek beating a rival gang member nearly to death in an alley 3 days earlier. He'd seen everything. The brass knuckles, the victim's blood on the pavement, the way Derek had laughed while doing it. And Derek knew that Marcus had seen. For 3 days, Marcus had been running. He'd stayed away from school, avoided the streets during the day, and slept in different places each night. But that July evening, desperate and exhausted, he'd made the mistake of thinking he could slip into Gloria's apartment unseen. He'd been wrong. Derek had caught him on the stairs, grabbing him by the shirt and slamming him against the wall. Marcus could still remember the smell of alcohol on Derek's breath, the cold metal of the gun pressed against his ribs. "You're going to forget what you saw," Derek had hissed. "You're going to tell anyone who asks that you were nowhere near that alley. Understand?" Marcus had nodded, too terrified to speak, but they both knew it didn't matter. Derek couldn't trust him. Marcus was a witness to attempted murder, and witnesses were liabilities. The gun had started to move upward, toward Marcus's head, and in that moment he had known with absolute certainty that he was about to die. Then Gloria's door had opened. She must have heard the commotion. She'd stepped out into the hallway in her nurse's scrubs, her shift bag still on her shoulder, and taken in the scene instantly. Marcus would never forget what happened next. Gloria hadn't screamed or panicked or begged. She'd walked forward with steady purpose, placing herself between Marcus and Derek. "Let the boy go," she'd said, her voice calm but firm. "This doesn't concern him." Derek had laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "The hell it doesn't. He saw me. He's a problem." "Then I'm a problem too," Gloria had replied, "because I saw you as well. Just now, threatening a child with a weapon. So if you're going to shoot someone, you'll have to shoot me first." She'd turned to Marcus then, her eyes meeting his for just a second. In that look, he'd seen everything she was telling him without words. "Run. Live. Don't look back. Get inside, Marcus," she'd said. "Call the police." But Marcus had been frozen, unable to move. The next moments had unfolded in a nightmare sequence that he'd replayed in his mind 10,000 times. Derek had raised the gun toward Gloria. There'd been a struggle, shouting, the deafening crack of a gunshot that seemed to echo forever in the narrow hallway. And then Derek Martinez was on the floor, bleeding from a wound in his chest, and Gloria was standing over him with the gun in her hand. Marcus pressed his forehead against the door of apartment 2C, his breath coming in short gasps. The trial had been swift and brutal. Derek had survived the shooting, paralyzed from the waist down. Gloria's public defender was overworked and underpaid. The prosecution painted her as a violent woman who'd shot an unarmed man. They claimed Derek had simply been talking to Marcus, that Gloria had overreacted, that she'd been the aggressor. Marcus had testified. He'd told the truth about what he'd seen in the alley, about Derek's threats, about the gun pressed to his ribs. But the defense attorney made him look like a troubled kid with a history of truancy and a criminal stepfather. They implied he was lying to protect Gloria. The jury, looking at a middle-aged black woman who'd shot a young Latino man in their neighborhood, had already made up their minds. 35 years. That was the sentence. 35 years for saving a boy's life. Marcus had been there when they read the verdict. He'd watched Gloria's face as the judge spoke, seen the slight tremble in her hands as the bailiff approached to take her away. She'd looked at him one last time before they led her out of the courtroom, and she'd mouthed 3 words, "Make something better." And God help him, he had run. Not right away. He'd visited her twice at the women's correctional facility, awkward and guilt-ridden, not knowing what to say to the woman who'd sacrificed everything for him. But then his mother had moved them to Los Angeles, chasing a new boyfriend and new opportunities, and Marcos had let the distance become an excuse. He'd let weeks turn into months, months into years. Êtes-vous toujours avec nous? Si cette histoire vous touche, si vous ressentez le poids de ce que Marcus porte depuis tant d'années, laissez un commentaire ci-dessous. Partagez vos pensées sur le sacrifice, la rédemption et le courage qu'il faut pour affronter son passé. Votre engagement nous aide à continuer à raconter ces histoires importantes qui nous rappellent notre humanité commune. He'd made something better, just as Gloria had asked. In Los Angeles, Marcus had thrown himself into the one thing that made sense. Acting. The high school drama teacher had seen something in him, a raw intensity born from real pain. He'd gotten a scholarship to a community college, then transferred to UCLA. Small roles led to bigger ones. By 25, he was a working actor. By 30, he was a star. Marcus Sullivan became a household name. Action films, prestige dramas, romantic comedies, he could do it all. The critics loved his emotional depth, the way he could convey suffering with just a look. They didn't know that he wasn't acting. Every performance was built on the foundation of genuine guilt, the face of a woman being led away in handcuffs, burned into his memory forever. He'd sent money, anonymous cashier's checks to Gloria's commissary account, enough to make her time inside more bearable. He told himself it was something, that he was helping, but he never visited again, never wrote, never picked up the phone on the few occasions when she'd called and left messages with his assistant. He'd built an empire on the ashes of her sacrifice, and he couldn't bear to face her. Until 3 months ago, when that photograph appeared in the Chicago Tribune. The Innocence Project had taken up Gloria's case 2 years earlier, fighting through bureaucratic nightmares and uncooperative witnesses. They'd finally tracked down Derek Martinez, now 50 years old and still in a wheelchair. Facing his own mortality and decades of regret, Derek had done something unexpected. He'd told the truth. He'd given a deposition admitting everything. The attempted murder Marcus had witnessed, the threats he'd made, the gun he'd held to a child's ribs, how Gloria had acted purely in defense of a minor. The state's attorney had fought the appeal, but the evidence was overwhelming. After 35 years, Gloria Henderson walked out of Logan Correctional Center, a free woman at the age of 78. Marcus had watched the news coverage from his home in Malibu, his wife asking if he was okay as tears streamed down his face. He'd mumbled something about it being a touching story, but she'd known there was more. That night, unable to sleep, he'd told her everything. About the scared boy he'd been. About the woman who'd saved him. About the cowardice that had kept him away for nearly 3 decades. So go to her, his wife had said simply. It's not too late. But was it? Marcus pulled away from the door of apartment 2C, his hand trembling. What right did he have to show up now? After all this time? What could he possibly say that would matter? Gloria had lost 35 years of her life. She'd gone into prison a middle-aged woman and emerged elderly, her health broken, her future uncertain. And where had he been? Living in mansions, walking red carpets, accepting awards. A door opened at the end of the hallway, and an elderly man peered out suspiciously. "You looking for someone?" Marcus cleared his throat, suddenly aware of how out of place he must look in his designer clothes. I used to know someone who lived here. Gloria Henderson? In 2C. The man's expression softened slightly. Gloria? You knew Gloria? Yes, a long time ago. She got out, you know. Saw it on the news. Damn shame what they did to that woman. She was good people. Helped everybody in this building. The man stepped into the hallway, squinting at Marcus. Say, don't I know you from somewhere? Marcus pulled his cap lower. I don't think so. Huh? You look familiar. The man shrugged. Anyway, Gloria don't live here no more. Building got sold a few years back. New owners been clearing people out, letting apartments sit empty so they can claim the building's abandoned, trying to tear it down, build something fancy. Most of the old tenants are gone. Do you know where she went? After she got out? The man shook his head. No idea. Probably some halfway house or something. That's where they usually send them, right? He studied Marcus more closely. You family? Something like that. Well, if you find her, you tell her Mickey from 2F said hello. Tell her I still got that coffee cake recipe she gave my wife. His eyes grew distant. My wife's gone now too. 5 years back. Cancer. Marcus nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He thanked Mickey and made his way back down the stairs, his mission seeming suddenly impossible. Chicago was a city of millions. Gloria could be anywhere. The Innocence Project might know, but they'd never give out that information to a stranger. He had money, resources, investigators he could hire, but what good were any of those things if Gloria didn't want to be found? Outside, the November wind had picked up, sending dried leaves skittering across the sidewalk. Marcus stood on the corner where he'd spent so many afternoons of his youth, watching the neighborhood flow around him. The panaderia was still there, though under a different name. The corner store had become a cell phone shop, but the bones of the neighborhood remained, a palimpsest of memory and change. His phone buzzed, his assistant wondering where he was. He was supposed to be at a meeting with his agent, discussing the new franchise film that would pay him $20 million. Instead, he was standing on a street corner in Chicago, chasing a ghost. Marcus was about to call his driver when he noticed the small church across the street. St. Augustine's. The white stone facade was cleaner than he remembered, recently renovated, but it was definitely the same building. Gloria had gone to services there every Sunday, had dragged Marcus along sometimes when she thought he needed spiritual guidance more than sleep. On impulse, he crossed the street and tried the heavy wooden door. It opened smoothly, revealing the dim, incense-scented interior. The church was empty at this hour on a Tuesday afternoon, just rows of worn pews and the soft glow of votive candles near the altar. Marcus removed his cap and walked down the center aisle, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. He hadn't been inside a church in years. His wife was Buddhist, and he drifted away from the Catholicism of his youth. But standing here now, he felt something shift inside him. This was where Gloria had prayed every week, had lit candles for people in need, had found the strength to keep going when everything in her life was hard. Can I help you, son? Marcus turned to find a priest emerging from a side door, an older man with white hair and a gentle smile. There was something familiar about him, but Marcus couldn't place it. I'm sorry, Father. I didn't mean to intrude. I was just remembering. The priest came closer, and his eyes widened with recognition. Marcus? Marcus Sullivan? Now it was Marcus's turn to be surprised. Yes, I'm sorry. Do we? Father Tom. Tom Rodriguez. I was just a young associate pastor here when you were a boy. You probably don't remember me, but I remember you. You used to come here with Gloria Henderson. The pieces clicked into place. Marcus did remember vaguely a young priest who'd sometimes talked to him after services, who'd been kind when Marcus's cynicism about religion had shown through. Father Tom. Yes, I remember now. Marcus felt his eyes burning again. I'm looking for her. For Gloria. I know she was released, but I don't know where she is. Father Rodriguez's expression grew complex, a mixture of understanding and something else Marcus couldn't quite read. So you've come back. After all these years, you've finally come back. There was no judgment in his voice, just a statement of fact, but Marcus felt it like a physical blow. I know I should have come sooner. I know I abandoned her. I couldn't face her. I couldn't face what she'd done for me, what it had cost her. And now you can? Marcus met the priest's eyes. I have to, even if she doesn't want to see me, even if she tells me to leave. I have to try to make it right. Father Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment, studying Marcus's face. Finally, he nodded slowly. She's staying at a transitional housing facility on the south side. St. Mary's Center. It's for formerly incarcerated women trying to reintegrate into society. He paused. I visit there twice a week. I saw her last Sunday. How is she? The question came out as barely more than a whisper. Surviving. The years were hard on her, Marcus. Prison broke something in her body, though not in her spirit. She has health problems. Diabetes, high blood pressure, arthritis. The state gave her a small settlement for the wrongful conviction. But it's not much, certainly not enough to make up for 35 years. Marcus felt sick. I can help. I have money. Can you give her back those years? Father Rodriguez's voice was still gentle but firm. Can you give her back her health, her youth, the life she should have had? No, Marcus's voice broke. No, I can't. But I can. I don't know what I can do. That's why I need to see her. The priest reached out and placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. She knows who you are, what you became. There was a television in the common area at the prison. She saw you in movies, winning awards. Do you know what she said once, when another inmate made a comment about you forgetting her? Marcus shook his head, afraid to hear the answer. She said, he didn't forget. He's living the life I wanted for him. That's enough. Father Rodriguez squeezed Marcus's shoulder. But I don't think it was enough. Not for her, and clearly not for you. So yes, you should go to her. But Marcus, you need to understand something. Gloria is not the same woman who went into that prison. None of us would be, after what she endured. Don't expect absolution. Don't expect her to make you feel better about your choices. If you're going to see her, it has to be for her sake, not yours. I understand. Do you? Because I see a lot of guilt on your face, son. Guilt is natural, but if you walk into that facility carrying all this guilt, making this about your need for forgiveness, you'll only add to her burden. She's carried enough for you already. The words hit Marcus like hammer blows, each one true and necessary and painful. He'd been so focused on his own feelings, his guilt, his shame, his need to make amends, that he hadn't fully considered what Gloria might need. What did a 78-year-old woman who'd lost most of her adult life to prison need? Probably not a celebrity showing up with apologies and checkbook in hand. What should I do then? Marcus asked, feeling lost. Father Rodriguez smiled. Start by listening, not performing, not trying to fix everything with grand gestures. Just be present, be real, be the boy she believed in, grown into a man who finally has the courage to face the truth. Marcus nodded slowly. The priest gave him the address of St. Mary's Center and instructions on when visiting hours were. As Marcus turned to leave, Father Rodriguez called after him. Marcus, She never stopped praying for you. Every Sunday she'd light a candle and say your name. Even after decades passed, even when she had every reason to be bitter, she never stopped loving you like a son. Marcus couldn't speak. He simply nodded and walked out of the church into the cold Chicago afternoon. The information felt like both a gift and a weight. Gloria had held on to love while he'd hidden behind fear. She'd been faithful while he'd been a coward. Marcus spent that night in a hotel room overlooking Lake Michigan, unable to sleep. He dismissed his driver, rented a car under a false name, and checked into the hotel wearing sunglasses and a hood. For once, he was grateful for the anonymity that disguise provided. He needed this time alone, this space to prepare himself for what was coming. He kept picking up his phone, then setting it down. His wife had texted 3 times, worried about him. His agent had called twice about the missed meeting. His publicist wanted to know his schedule for the next premiere. The machine of his celebrity life continued to turn, indifferent to the emotional crisis happening inside him. Around 3 in the morning, Marcus finally opened his laptop and did what he'd been avoiding for years. He searched for information about Gloria's case. The articles were brutal to read. There were photographs from the trial. Gloria in an orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed, her face carefully neutral. There were quotes from the prosecutor calling her dangerous, from Derek Martinez's family demanding justice, from neighbors who barely knew her offering opinions about her character. And there was his own testimony, reduced to a few paragraphs in a news article. The defendant's 14-year-old neighbor testified that Martinez had threatened him with a weapon, but prosecutors suggested the boy was coached by Henderson. Marcus remembered the defense attorney's cross-examination, how she twisted his words, made him seem like a liar or a fool. He remembered looking at Gloria, wanting her to know he'd tried, and seeing only acceptance in her eyes. She'd known even then how it would end. He found more recent articles about her release. The Innocence Project statement, Derek Martinez's confession given from his nursing home bed where he was dying of liver failure. A photograph of Gloria walking out of the prison, looking small and frail in clothes that hung loose on her diminished frame. The caption mentioned that no family members were there to greet her. Just her attorney and a social worker. No family. Because Marcus, the closest thing to family she'd had, was in Los Angeles pretending she didn't exist. He slammed the laptop shut and walked to the window. The city stretched out before him, lights twinkling in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Gloria was sleeping in a transitional housing facility, trying to figure out how to build a life at 78 after losing everything. And here he was in a luxury suite, agonizing over his feelings. Father Rodriguez's words echoed in his mind. If you're going to see her, it has to be for her sake, not yours. What did Gloria need? Not his guilt, certainly. Not his money, probably, though he'd offer it anyway quietly, in case it could help. What she needed, he realized, was something much simpler and infinitely more difficult. She needed to know that her sacrifice hadn't been in vain, that the boy she'd saved had become a good man, that the life she'd given him by taking away her own had been worth it. Had it been? Marcus examined his life with brutal honesty in the dark hours before dawn. Yes, he'd become successful. Yes, he'd made something of himself. But had he been good? He donated to charities, sure, mostly for the tax write-offs. He was polite to fans and professional on set. He'd never been arrested, never had a scandal, maintained the image of a decent guy. But he'd also been a coward. He'd abandoned the woman who saved him. He'd let fear and shame dictate his choices for 27 years. He'd built his entire career on the ability to fake emotions while running from his real ones. What kind of man did that make him? The kind who could change, he decided. It was too late to undo the past, but it wasn't too late to do better going forward. Whatever happened when he saw Gloria, whatever she said or didn't say, he could at least face her as someone ready to finally take responsibility. Morning came slowly. Marcus showered, dressed in simple clothes, jeans, a sweater, nothing flashy. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw a 41-year-old man with lines around his eyes and gray creeping into his temples. When had he gotten old? When had the scared 14-year-old boy become this person? Mary's center was in Bronzeville, in a converted apartment building that had seen better days. Marcus parked across the street and sat in his car for 10 minutes, building up courage. Women came and went through the front entrance, some young, some old, all carrying the particular wariness of people who'd learned not to trust the world too much. Finally, he forced himself out of the car and crossed the street. The entrance led to a small lobby with a security desk where a tired-looking woman sat reading a romance novel. She glanced up as Marcus approached. "Visiting hours are noon to 4, she said. "Sign in here. Who are you seeing?" "Gloria Henderson." His voice sounded strange to his own ears. The woman consulted a list. Henderson. Yeah, she's here. Room 307. Take the elevator to the 3rd floor. Turn right. But you'll need to wait in the common room. We don't allow visitors in the residential rooms." Marcus signed the visitor log with a name that wasn't quite his own. Mark Sullivan. Close enough to be honest, but different enough to avoid recognition. The security guard barely glanced at it. She pressed a button that buzzed open the inner door, and Marcus stepped into a hallway that smelled of industrial cleaner and old coffee. The elevator groaned its way to the 3rd floor. When the doors opened, Marcus found himself in a wide corridor with worn linoleum floors and fluorescent lights that hummed overhead. Doors lined both sides, most of them closed. At the far end, he could see an open space that must be the common room. He walked slowly, reading the numbers on the doors. 301, 303, 305, 307. He stopped. Behind this door, Gloria was living her post-prison life. What did the room look like? Was it bare and institutional, or had she managed to make it feel like home? Did she have photographs, books, small comforts, or just the basics provided by the facility? Marcus raised his hand to knock, then stopped. The security guard had said to wait in the common room. He should follow the rules. He turned and walked to the end of the hall, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. The common room was larger than he'd expected, with mismatched furniture arranged in conversational groupings. A television played a daytime talk show in one corner, though no one was watching it. A few women sat scattered around the room, one doing a crossword puzzle, 2 others talking quietly over cups of coffee, another staring out the window at the gray Chicago sky. And there, in a chair near a bookshelf, was Gloria. Marcus froze in the doorway. She was reading, her head bent over a paperback. Reading glasses perched on her nose. She wore a simple cardigan over a floral dress, and her hair, completely gray now, was pulled back in a neat bun. She looked so small, so fragile. Nothing like the strong, capable woman who had stepped between him and a gun. As if sensing his presence, Gloria looked up. For a moment their eyes met across the room, and Marcus saw recognition flicker across her face. Her expression went through a rapid series of changes. Surprise, confusion, something that might have been pain or joy or both. Then she carefully marked her place in the book, removed her reading glasses, and simply looked at him. She didn't stand, didn't speak, just looked, as if trying to reconcile the boy she'd known with the man standing before her. Marcus forced his feet to move. He crossed the common room, aware that the other women had noticed him, that they were watching this reunion with curiosity. When he reached Gloria's chair, he didn't know what to do with his hands, his body, himself. "Hello, Gloria," he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus." She said his name like a prayer, like a wound, like a question that had waited nearly 3 decades for an answer. "You came. I'm sorry it took so long." Gloria studied his face for a long moment, and Marcus forced himself not to look away, to let her see everything. The guilt, the shame, the regret, the love that had never actually died despite his best efforts to bury it. "Sit down," she said finally, gesturing to the chair across from her. "You're making me nervous, looming over me like that." It was such a Gloria thing to say, so practical and slightly teasing, that Marcus felt something break open in his chest. He sat, and for a moment, they just looked at each other. Up close, he could see the toll the years had taken. Her hands, resting on the book in her lap, were gnarled with arthritis. Her face was deeply lined, and there was a tremor in her left hand that she tried to hide. But her eyes, those eyes that had looked at a terrified boy and seen someone worth saving, those were the same. "You look good," Gloria said. "Successful. Healthy. Like you've been eating regular meals and sleeping in a real bed." "Gloria, She held up a hand, stopping him. "Before you say whatever you came here to say, I need you to understand something. I'm not angry with you. I never was. You should be. I abandoned you. I left you in that place for 27 years and never looked back." "You were a child," Gloria said firmly. "A traumatized child who'd already been through more than any kid should have to bear. You don't owe me anything, Marcus. You never did." "How can you say that? You gave up your entire life for me." "No." Gloria leaned forward, her voice taking on the stern tone he remembered from when she was correcting his homework. "I made a choice. A grown woman's choice to protect a child. That wasn't about you owing me. That was about me being a decent human being when it mattered." Marcus felt tears spilling down his cheeks and didn't bother to wipe them away. "You shouldn't have had to make that choice. The system should have protected you. I should have been able to protect you. Baby, you were 14. Her voice softened and she reached out, placing one arthritic hand over his. Her touch was warm despite the tremor. "The world failed me that day. Yes. The prosecutor, the jury, the judge. They all failed me. But you? You were just a scared kid trying to survive. I never blamed you for that." "I saw you on the news," Marcus said. "When you were released, there was no one there for you. The lawyer was there. She was very kind. You know what I mean. There should have been family. There should have been me." Gloria was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, there was a catch in her voice. "I won't lie and say it didn't hurt, those first few years when you stopped visiting. I'd wait for letters that never came. But then I realized something. You were out there living, Marcus. You were free and healthy and building a life. And that's what I wanted. That's what made it all worthwhile." "I sent money," Marcus said, knowing how pathetic it sounded. "To your commissary account. I know. Anonymous cashier's checks, every month like clockwork. You think I didn't know it was you?" Gloria smiled slightly. "Marcus, I'm not stupid. That money helped. It made things easier. But it also told me you were okay, that you were doing well enough to spare it. That brought me more comfort than you know." Marcus shook his head. Unable to accept the grace she was offering him. "Money isn't the same as being there. It isn't the same as showing up, as caring enough to face what I was too afraid to face." "Maybe not," Gloria conceded, "but it was something. And now you're here. That's something too." One of the other women in the common room approached, an older Hispanic woman with curiosity written all over her face. "Gloria, you okay? You need anything?" Gloria smiled at her. "I'm fine, Maria. This is an old friend. We're just catching up." Maria looked Marcus up and down, clearly trying to place him. "You look familiar. Are you somebody famous or something?" "No," Marcus said quickly. "Just an old friend, like Gloria said." Maria didn't look convinced, but she shrugged and returned to her coffee. Gloria waited until she was out of earshot, then leaned closer to Marcus. "She's going to figure it out eventually. Most of them will. There's a television here, and you're on it fairly regularly." She paused. "I've seen your movies, you know. Even in prison, we got movie night once a month. I saw you in that one about the soldier coming home from war. You were magnificent." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "You watched my movies," Every single one I could. Even the bad ones. She smiled, and for a moment he saw a flash of the woman she'd been before. Playful, warm, alive. That superhero one was pretty terrible, if I'm being honest, but I still watched it twice. Despite everything, Marcus laughed, a sound somewhere between joy and grief. It was terrible. I needed the paycheck. I figured. But you were good in it anyway. You're always good, Marcus. You have a gift. They sat in silence for a moment, and Marcus felt the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on him. There was so much he wanted to ask, so much he needed to understand. But where to begin? What was it like? He finally asked. Those 35 years. I need to know, Gloria. I need to understand what you went through because of me. Gloria's expression grew distant, her gaze turning inward. You don't need to know that, baby. Some things are better left. Please. Marcus gripped her hand more tightly. Please. I've spent nearly 3 decades running from the truth. I need to stop running. She studied his face, and he could see her weighing whether to protect him one more time or to finally let him carry some of the burden. Finally, she sighed. It was hard, she said simply, especially in the beginning. I'd never been in trouble before in my life. Never even had a speeding ticket, and suddenly I'm in maximum security with women who'd done things I couldn't even imagine. I was terrified every single day for the first year. Marcus felt sick, but he forced himself to listen. The first facility was the worst. Overcrowded, violent, corrupt guards. I learned quickly to keep my head down, to find a few allies, to survive. There was a woman there, Big Ruth we called her, who took me under her wing. She taught me the rules, the real rules, not the ones in the handbook. How to avoid trouble, who to stay away from, where it was safe to be and where it wasn't. Gloria's voice grew quieter. Ruth saved my life more than once. She died of a heart attack in year 12. I still think about her. Gloria. Marcus didn't know what to say. They transferred me to medium security after 15 years. Better conditions, less violence, but by then I was already changed. Prison does that to you. It rewires your brain. You learn to live in a constant state of hypervigilance. You learn not to trust anyone completely. You learn that privacy is a luxury and dignity is something you have to fight for every single day. She paused, and Marcus saw her hands trembling more noticeably now. He realized she was reliving it, pulling up memories she'd probably tried hard to bury. The worst part wasn't the violence or the fear, Gloria continued. It was watching time pass and knowing I was missing everything. Watching women get letters from their children, their grandchildren, seeing them get visits, get released. And I just stayed, year after year after year. My sister died while I was inside. Heart attack, sudden. They didn't let me go to the funeral. My mother passed 2 years later. Same thing. I mourned them in a cell, Marcus. Alone. Marcus was openly weeping now, but Gloria kept talking as if a dam had broken after decades of holding back. I got sick in year 22. Diabetes. The medical care in prison is, well, it's not great. They gave me insulin, but not enough education about managing it. My vision started to deteriorate. The arthritis got bad from sleeping on thin mattresses and sitting on metal chairs for hours every day. Some days my hands hurt so much I could barely hold a book, but books were all I had, so I held them anyway. Why didn't you give up? Marcus asked. How did you keep going? Gloria looked at him with those steady eyes. Because I needed to know how your story ended. I needed to see if that scared boy I protected became the man I believed he could be. Every time I wanted to quit, I'd think about you out there somewhere, living the life I'd given you the chance to have. And I'd think, I need to hold on just a little longer, just to see. The weight of that confession nearly crushed Marcus. She had endured hell itself, had suffered beyond comprehension, and she'd done it partly for him, not just because of him, but for him. to see his story through, to whatever end it might have. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "God, Gloria, I'm so sorry. I know you are, baby. I can see it written all over you, but you need to forgive yourself. You need to let it go." "How? How can I possibly let it go when you lost everything?" Gloria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was thoughtful, measured. "I won't pretend those years didn't happen, or that they didn't take things from me I can never get back. But Marcus, I'm not nothing. I survived. I'm here. I'm free. And I got to see you walk through that door today, a grown man, successful and healthy and alive. That matters. It has to matter. Or what was it all for?" It wasn't fair. None of it was fair. No, it wasn't. Life rarely is. But we don't get to choose what happens to us. We only get to choose how we respond. She squeezed his hand. "I chose to protect you. I'd make the same choice again, even knowing how it would turn out. You were worth saving, Marcus. You still are." They sat together in silence, holding hands across the divide of years and pain. The other women in the common room had stopped pretending not to watch. Maria was openly crying, and the woman by the window had put down her magazine to stare at them. "What happens now?" Marcus finally asked. "What do you need? What can I do?" Gloria smiled sadly. "You can stop trying to fix this with grand gestures. I don't need you to swoop in like one of your movie characters and save the day. I just need you to be honest with me. Can you do that? Yes. Then tell me the truth. Why did you really come here? And don't say it's because you saw me on the news and felt guilty. I need the real reason." Marcus took a deep breath, forcing himself to look past his guilt to the deeper truth underneath. "Because I was dying inside. Because I've spent my whole adult life pretending to be someone I'm not, playing parts instead of being real. Because no matter how successful I became, there was always this hole in my chest where you used to be. Because I needed to know if there was any chance, any possibility that you could forgive me for being weak when you needed me to be strong." "Oh, Marcus," Gloria's eyes filled with tears. "I already told you, I'm not angry, but I think maybe you're asking the wrong question. It's not about whether I can forgive you. It's about whether you can forgive yourself." "I don't know how." "Then let me help you, just like I did when you were a boy." She paused. "But this time, you have to help me too. I'm not the strong woman I was back then. I'm old and sick and scared about what comes next. The state gave me some money, but it's not much. This facility is only temporary. Eventually, I'll need to find permanent housing, figure out how to navigate a world that's completely different from the one I left. I don't even know how to use a smartphone, Marcus. Everything is online now, and I don't understand any of it." This finally was something concrete, something Marcus could actually do. "Let me help. Please. I have resources, connections. I can find you a place to live, help you get settled, hire someone to teach you about technology, whatever you need." "I don't want your money, baby." "Then don't think of it as money. Think of it as me finally showing up. Think of it as me being the son you deserved instead of the coward I was." Gloria studied him carefully. "If I let you help, and that's a big if, it has to be on my terms. No mansions, no flashy cars, no trying to make up for 35 years all at once. Just help, real help, the kind that respects who I am and what I need. Whatever you want, whatever you need. I'm here now, and I'm not leaving again. I promise you that. Don't make promises you can't keep. I can keep this one." Marcus leaned forward, his voice fierce with conviction. "I'm done running, Gloria. I'm done pretending. I don't care if it affects my career or my public image or anything else. You are my family. You're the woman who saved my life, and I'm going to be here for you for whatever time we have left. That's not a grand gesture. That's just the truth." Gloria's eyes searched his face, looking for any hint of insincerity. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her because she nodded slowly. Okay then. We'll figure this out together. But Marcus, you need to understand something. I'm not the same person I was. Prison changed me in ways I'm still discovering. I have nightmares. I have panic attacks sometimes when I'm in crowds. I don't trust easily anymore. This isn't going to be some fairy tale reunion where everything is magically better. I don't expect it to be. I just want the chance to be part of your life again. However that looks, then you should know that I see a therapist here. Twice a week. The Innocence Project set it up as part of my release. She's helping me process everything, deal with the PTSD. If you're serious about being in my life, you might want to talk to someone too. We both have a lot of healing to do. Marcus nodded. I will. I'll do whatever it takes. A bell rang somewhere in the building, and Gloria glanced at a clock on the wall. That's the lunch bell. We eat communally here. You're welcome to stay if you want, though the food isn't exactly gourmet. I'd like that, if you don't mind. Gloria stood slowly, using the arms of the chair to lever herself up. Marcus instinctively reached out to help her, and she let him, though he could see the flash of pride that crossed her face at needing assistance. They walked together toward the dining room, and Marcus was acutely aware of how slowly she moved, how carefully she placed each step. The dining room was a large space with long tables arranged in rows, institutional and utilitarian but clean. Women were already lining up at a serving counter where staff members ladled out what looked like chicken, rice, and green beans. The smell reminded Marcus of every cafeteria he'd ever been in. Not unpleasant, but distinctly institutional. Gloria led him to a table near the window where several other women were already sitting. They looked up with interest as Marcus approached, and he could see the moment of recognition ripple through the group. Ladies, this is Marcus, an old friend from the neighborhood, Gloria said, her tone making it clear that she didn't want to elaborate. Old friend, my ass, said Maria, the woman who'd approached them earlier. That's Marcus Sullivan, the movie star. I knew I recognized you. The other women began murmuring excitedly, but Gloria held up her hand. Yes, he's famous. Yes, he's been in movies, but right now he's just Marcus, and he's having lunch with me. So let's all act like we have some sense, okay? Her authoritative tone worked. The women settled down, though Marcus could feel their eyes on him as he sat down next to Gloria. A younger woman, probably in her 30s, went to get food for Gloria without being asked, and Marcus realized that this was part of the community here, the women looking out for each other. Thank you, Keisha, Gloria said when the woman returned with 2 trays. She pushed one toward Marcus. I hope you're not vegetarian or anything fancy like that. Marcus looked down at the simple meal and felt a rush of memory. How many times had he sat at Gloria's small kitchen table, eating whatever she'd managed to put together after a long shift? She'd never had much, but she'd always shared it. It's perfect, he said, and meant it. They ate in relative silence, the other women at the table occasionally sneaking glances at Marcus, but respecting Gloria's implicit request for privacy. The chicken was overcooked and the vegetables were mushy, but Marcus ate every bite. It felt important somehow to share this meal in this place, to participate in the reality of Gloria's life rather than just observing it. Halfway through the meal, a young woman approached their table hesitantly. She couldn't have been more than 25, with nervous eyes and a baby bump showing under her loose shirt. Miss Gloria, I'm sorry to interrupt, but could you maybe help me with that thing we talked about after lunch? Gloria's face softened immediately. Of course, sweetie. We'll go over your resume again. Work on those interview questions. You're going to do great. The young woman smiled, relief evident on her face, and hurried back to her own table. Marcus looked at Gloria questioningly. Shanice, Gloria explained quietly. She got caught up in her boyfriend's drug business, did 3 years. She's trying to get her life together before the baby comes. I've been helping her prepare for job interviews, teaching her how to present herself, that kind of thing. You've only been out for 3 months, Marcus said, amazed. And you're already helping other people? Gloria shrugged. What else am I going to do? sit around feeling sorry for myself. These women need support, Marcus. Most of them have nobody. The world treats them like they're disposable, like one mistake defines them forever. Somebody has to remind them they're worth more than that. Marcus felt something shift in his understanding. He'd been thinking of Gloria as a victim, someone who needed to be rescued and cared for. But she was still doing what she'd always done, seeing people others overlooked and offering them dignity and hope. Prison hadn't broken that part of her. If anything, it had refined it. "You're remarkable," he said softly. "I'm just doing what needs to be done." Gloria finished her meal and stood. "Come on, I'll show you my room, and then I need to help Shanice. You're welcome to stay or go, whatever you prefer." Marcus followed her out of the dining room and back to the elevator. The ride to the third floor was silent, both of them lost in their own thoughts. When they reached room 307, Gloria pulled out a key and unlocked the door. The room was small, maybe 12 by 14 feet, with a single bed, a dresser, a small desk, and a chair. A narrow closet held a few items of clothing. But Gloria had made it personal. A colorful quilt on the bed, photographs taped to the wall, books stacked on the desk, a small plant on the windowsill struggling to grow in the weak winter light. Marcus moved closer to the photographs. One showed a much younger Gloria with an older woman who must have been her mother. Another showed Gloria in her nurse's aide uniform, smiling at the camera. And there, tucked in the corner, was a picture he recognized with a jolt. It was him at 13, gangly and awkward, standing next to Gloria at a church picnic. He barely remembered the day, but she'd kept the photo all these years. "You kept this," he said, his voice thick. "Through everything. You kept this." "Of course I did. It was all I had of you for a very long time." Gloria sat on the edge of her bed with a soft groan. "The prison let me keep a few personal items. That picture, my Bible, a few letters, they were my treasures." Marcus stared at the photograph, at the boy he'd been and the woman who'd loved him. "I should have been there. For your mother's funeral, your sister's, all of it. I should have been there." "Maybe. But you're here now, and that counts for something." Gloria gestured to the chair. "Sit down, Marcus. You're going to wear yourself out with all this guilt." He sat, and for a moment they simply looked at each other. Outside, the winter afternoon was fading into evening, casting long shadows across the small room. "Tell me about your life," Gloria said. "The real version, not what I see in magazines or on TV. Are you happy?" The question surprised him with its directness. I don't know. I thought I was. I have a wife I love, a career I'm proud of, financial security. But there's always been this emptiness underneath it all. This sense that I'm not quite real, that I'm just playing the part of Marcus Sullivan rather than actually being him. And why do you think that is? Because I built my whole life on a foundation of running away. From you, from what happened, from the truth of who I really am and where I came from. I convinced myself that if I became successful enough, famous enough, I could outrun the guilt. But it doesn't work that way." Gloria nodded slowly. "No, it doesn't. Believe me, I tried to outrun things too, in my own way. In prison, I could have become bitter, could have let the injustice of it all consume me. And for a while I did. I was angry at God, angry at the system, angry at Derek Martinez, angry at the world. But that anger was eating me alive from the inside. What changed? I realized that I had a choice. I could let prison destroy me, or I could decide that my life still had meaning even in that horrible place. So I started looking for ways to help other inmates. I taught women to read. I mediated conflicts. I prayed with people who were losing hope. It didn't change the fact that I was locked up, but it changed how I experienced being locked up." Marcus leaned forward. "How do you do that? How do you find meaning in something so unjust?" "By understanding that life isn't fair, and it never will be. Bad things happen to good people. Good people make mistakes. The world is messy and complicated and often cruel. But we still get to choose how we respond to our circumstances. We still get to decide what kind of person we're going to be. I want to be better, Marcus said. I want to be the person you believed I could be when I was 14. But I don't know how to get there from here, Gloria smiled gently. You start by being honest. With yourself. With the people in your life. With me. You stop performing and start living. And you accept that becoming better is a process, not a destination. You're going to mess up. You're going to fall back into old patterns. But you keep trying anyway. Will you help me? Will you let me be part of your life while I figure this out? I already said yes to that, didn't I? Gloria's expression grew more serious. But Marcus, you need to understand something. I can't be your salvation. I can't fix what's broken inside you. That's work you have to do yourself, probably with a good therapist. What I can be is your family. I can be someone who knows the worst parts of your story and loves you anyway. But you have to do the hard work of healing. I will. I promise I will. A knock on the door interrupted them. Shanice peeked her head in, looking apologetic. Miss Gloria? I'm sorry, but do you still have time to help me? Of course, sweetie. Come in. Gloria stood, then turned to Marcus. You're welcome to stay in Chicago for a while. There's a lot we need to talk about, decisions to make about the future. But right now I have work to do. Marcus stood as well. Can I come back tomorrow? I'd like that. Gloria walked over and took both his hands in hers. But Marcus, don't put your whole life on hold for me. You have responsibilities, people who depend on you. We'll figure out a way to stay connected that works for both of us. My life can wait. This is more important. Everything feels urgent when you've waited 27 years. But we have time now. We don't have to solve everything in one day. She squeezed his hands. Go back to your hotel. Call your wife. Think about what you really want and need. Then come back tomorrow, and we'll talk more. Marcus wanted to argue, to insist that he needed to stay, to do something, anything to make up for lost time. But he recognized the wisdom in her words. He was running on emotion and guilt, not thinking clearly about what would actually be helpful. Okay, he said. I'll come back tomorrow. Same time? That works. Visiting hours end at 4, so come before then. He started to leave, then turned back. Gloria, thank you. For everything. For saving me back then. For surviving what you survived. For giving me another chance now. I know I don't deserve it. But thank you. Oh, baby. Gloria's eyes filled with tears. You deserve to be protected. You deserve to be loved. You still do. Now go on, get out of here before you make me cry in front of Shanice. Marcus left, walking down the hallway in a daze. His mind was spinning with everything that had happened, everything Gloria had said. The elevator ride down felt surreal, as if he were moving through a dream. He signed out at the security desk and stepped out into the cold Chicago evening. The city was alive around him. Cars passing, people hurrying home from work, the distant sound of a train. Marcus stood on the sidewalk and pulled out his phone. 17 missed calls, 32 text messages. His life, the one he'd built in Los Angeles, demanding his attention. He called his wife. Marcus, oh my God, where have you been? I've been worried sick. I'm sorry. I should have called sooner. I'm in Chicago. I know you're in Chicago. You told me that. But you've been radio silent for almost 24 hours. Your agent is freaking out. Your publicist is threatening to quit, and I've been imagining all kinds of terrible scenarios. I saw her. I saw Gloria. There was a pause on the other end of the line. How did it go? It was God, Sarah. It was everything and nothing like I expected. She's so different, and exactly the same. She's been through hell, but she's still herself somehow. Still helping people, still finding meaning, still the woman who saved you. Yes, Marcus felt tears starting again. And I don't know what to do. I want to fix everything, but I can't. I want to give her back what she lost, but that's impossible. I want to, Marcus, breathe. Just breathe for a second. He did, standing on the street corner in his old neighborhood, breathing in the cold Chicago air. Better? Sarah asked. A little. Good. Now listen to me. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to solve 35 years of injustice in one visit. You just have to show up. You just have to be present. Can you do that? I think so. She said basically the same thing, that I need to stop trying to save her and just be part of her life. She sounds like a wise woman. She is. Sarah, I need to stay here for a while. I know I have commitments, but I need to figure this out. I need to be here for her. Then stay. I'll handle your agent and your publicist. We'll reschedule what we can and cancel what we can't. This is more important. I love you. Have I told you that lately? Not nearly enough. But I love you too. And Marcus, I'm proud of you. For going there, for facing this, for finally dealing with something you've been running from for so long. They talked for a few more minutes, working out logistics, and then Marcus hung up. He looked back at the building where Gloria was probably helping Shanice practice interview questions, where women who'd been written off by society were trying to rebuild their lives with whatever scraps they'd been given. Marcus made a decision. He pulled up his contacts and called his business manager. Marcus, finally, where the hell have you been? Jerry, I need you to do something for me. It's important. Okay, shoot. I need you to set up a trust fund, a substantial one, and I need you to find the best social services attorney in Chicago. Someone who specializes in helping formerly incarcerated people reintegrate into society. Okay. What's this about? It's about paying a debt that's 35 years overdue. And Jerry, this is between us. No publicity, no press releases, no using it for tax write-offs. This is personal. Marcus spent the next hour on the phone, making calls, setting things in motion. He contacted a real estate agent about finding a small house or apartment in a safe neighborhood. He researched programs for formerly incarcerated people, organizations that provided job training and support services. He called a friend who ran a healthcare company and asked about getting Gloria enrolled in a comprehensive health insurance plan. He wasn't trying to fix everything with money. He understood now that money couldn't solve the real problems. But it could remove some of the practical obstacles, could provide a foundation of security that would allow Gloria to focus on healing rather than just surviving. As he worked, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years, a sense of purpose that had nothing to do with his career or his image. This was real. This mattered, and whether Gloria accepted all of his help or only some of it, at least he was finally doing something instead of just running away. By the time he got back to his hotel, it was after 9. Marcus ordered room service, something simple, not the expensive menu items the hotel was famous for, and sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Gloria was probably getting ready for bed in her small room at St. Mary's Center. Was she thinking about their reunion? Was she second-guessing her decision to let him back into her life? Marcus pulled out his laptop and did something he should have done years ago. He searched for information about prison reform, wrongful convictions, the Innocence Project. He read articles about the challenges formerly incarcerated people faced when trying to reintegrate into society. He learned about the trauma of long-term incarceration, the health problems it caused, the way it fundamentally changed a person's brain chemistry and ability to function in the outside world. The more he read, the more he understood just how little he actually knew about what Gloria had endured. It wasn't just 35 years in a building. It was 35 years of systematic dehumanization, of living in constant fear, of being stripped of autonomy and dignity. It was trauma layered upon trauma, year after year, with no escape and no end in sight. And through all of that, she'd held on to her humanity. She'd found ways to help other people. She'd kept his photograph and prayed for his success. She'd survived when so many others would have given up. Marcus made another decision. Tomorrow, He would ask Gloria if she'd be willing to share her full story, not for a movie or a book or anything public, but just so he could truly understand. And he would share his own story with her, the parts she didn't know. The years of therapy he'd avoided, the relationships he'd sabotaged because he couldn't handle real intimacy. The way he'd used his career as a shield against genuine connection. If they were going to rebuild their relationship, it had to be based on honesty. No more hiding, no more pretending, no more running. Just two people who'd been through hell in different ways, trying to find their way back to each other. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, Marcus considered ignoring it. Probably another journalist or someone who'd gotten hold of his private number, but something made him open it. "This is Gloria. Shanice helped me figure out how to text. I wanted to say thank you for coming today. It meant more than you know. Sleep well. See you tomorrow." Marcus stared at the message, his vision blurring with tears. Such a simple thing, a text message, but it represented Gloria reaching across the divide, taking a step toward connection in this new world she was still learning to navigate. She'd asked for help to send it, had probably fumbled with the unfamiliar technology, all so she could tell him that his visit mattered. He typed back carefully, "Thank you for giving me another chance. I won't waste it. See you tomorrow." 3 dots appeared, showing she was typing. Then, "You never wasted anything, Marcus. You became exactly who I hoped you'd be. Now you just need to believe it yourself." Marcus set down his phone and wept. Not tears of guilt or shame, though those were still there, but tears of gratitude. Gratitude that Gloria had survived. Gratitude that she was willing to let him back into her life. Gratitude that it wasn't too late, that they still had time to write a different ending to their story. He thought about the scared 14-year-old boy who'd hidden behind Gloria's skirt, who'd watched her sacrifice everything for him. That boy had spent 27 years running, building walls, becoming someone else. But maybe it was time to let that boy rest. Maybe it was time to become the man Gloria had always believed he could be. Not a movie star or a celebrity, but someone who showed up, who faced hard truths, who chose love over fear. The next morning, Marcus woke early and went for a run along the lakefront. The December wind was brutal, but he welcomed the physical discomfort. It kept him grounded, reminded him that he was alive and present and here for a reason. After showering and dressing, he made more calls. His agent was upset about the canceled meetings, but Marcus held firm. He would stay in Chicago as long as Gloria needed him. His publicist suggested they could spin his absence as a family emergency, which Marcus supposed it was in a way. "Just tell them I'm dealing with personal matters," Marcus said. "No details, no speculation. If anyone asks, I'll be back when I'm back." He arrived at St. Mary's Center at 11:30, giving himself time before the official visiting hours started. The same security guard was at the desk, and she recognized him this time. "Back to see Miss Gloria?" "Yes, ma'am. She's in the common room. Been there since breakfast, reading to some of the other ladies. She does that sometimes. Reads to the ones who struggle with it." The guard smiled. "She's good people, that one." "Yes, she is." Marcus found Gloria exactly where the guard said she'd be, sitting in her usual chair with a book open in her lap. But she wasn't reading to herself. 3 other women sat nearby, listening intently as Gloria read aloud from what looked like a romance novel. Her voice was animated, changing slightly for different characters, bringing the story to life. When she finished the chapter, the women applauded softly. Gloria looked up and saw Marcus standing in the doorway. Her face lit up with a smile that made her look years younger. "Ladies, my friend is here. We'll pick up tomorrow with chapter 12, okay?" The women dispersed reluctantly, clearly disappointed to have the story interrupted. Gloria marked her place and set the book aside, gesturing for Marcus to sit. "You're early," she said. "I couldn't wait. Is that okay?" "More than okay." Gloria studied his face. "You look like you didn't sleep much." "I did some thinking, some reading, some planning." Marcus pulled out his phone. I hope this doesn't overstep, but I wanted to talk to you about some things I've been working on. He explained about the trust fund, carefully framing it not as charity, but as a way to provide security and options. He told her about the attorney he'd hired to help navigate the complex bureaucracy of post-incarceration life. He mentioned the real estate agent who was looking for suitable housing options, emphasizing that Gloria would have complete control over where and how she lived. Gloria listened quietly, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment. "That's a lot," she finally said. "Too much? I'm sorry. I know I said no grand gestures, but I just wanted to—" She held up a hand. "Let me finish. It's a lot, yes. But it's also thoughtful. You're not trying to swoop in and make decisions for me. You're trying to give me tools and options. There's a difference. So you'll accept the help?" "Some of it." "The attorney, yes, that's practical, and something I definitely need. The housing assistance maybe, depending on what your agent finds. The trust fund," she paused. "That one's harder for me. I don't want your money, Marcus. It's not about the money. It's about making sure you're taken care of. It's about not having to worry about medical bills or rent or any of the 1,000 financial stresses that make life harder than it needs to be. I've been taking care of myself for 78 years. I know. And you shouldn't have to do it alone anymore. Please, Gloria, let me do this. Not because you need saving, but because you deserve support. Because family helps family." Gloria's eyes filled with tears at the word family. "Is that what we are? Still? After everything? We never stopped being family. I was just too afraid to admit it." Marcus reached across and took her hand. "You're the only mother I've ever really had. The only person who ever looked at me and saw someone worth protecting, worth investing in. I can't give you back the years you lost, but I can make sure your future is secure. Please let me do that." "Okay," Gloria whispered. "Okay, but on one condition. Anything. You use some of that money and influence to help other women like me. Women who've been wrongfully convicted. Women who are trying to rebuild their lives after prison. There are so many people here who need support, who have nobody. If you're going to do this for me, do it for them too." Marcus felt something click into place in his chest. "Yes, absolutely yes. We'll set up a foundation, fund it properly, hire people who know what they're doing. We'll make it about more than just us." "Good," Gloria squeezed his hand. "Now enough about money and plans. Tell me about your wife. Is she good to you?" They spent the next hour talking about Marcus's life in a way they never had before. He told her about Sarah, about how they'd met on a film set and fallen in love despite all his emotional baggage. He told her about the early years of his career, the struggles and the small victories. He talked about the roles that had meant something to him and the ones he'd taken just for the paycheck. And Gloria listened, really listened, asking questions and offering observations that showed she understood him in ways most people never had. She didn't judge him for his mistakes or put him on a pedestal for his successes. She just saw him, all of him, and loved him anyway. "You should bring her here," Gloria said at one point. "Your wife. I'd like to meet her. She'd like that too. She's been worried about me, about this trip. She sounds like a good woman. Hold on to her, Marcus. Real love is rare enough that you don't want to take it for granted." Speaking from experience, Gloria smiled sadly. "I had a man once, long time ago, before you knew me. He wanted to marry me, but I was focused on my career, on being independent. I kept putting him off, telling him we had time. Then he got sick, cancer, and died within 6 months. I never got to tell him all the things I should have said. So yes, speaking from experience, don't wait for the perfect moment to tell the people you love that they matter. The perfect moment is now."